struggling to move your nonprofit forward? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Nonprofit Architect, where we are giving you the actionable steps you need to launch and grow your nonprofit organization. Now, here's your host, Travis Johnson.
Hey, good morning and welcome to the Nonprofit Architect podcast. I'm sitting here today with Sonia Chavez. She leads Looking2Leap, and it's their mission to transform leadership. Sonia, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well, Travis. Thank you for having me.
We were talking before the show and getting fired up, and we're talking about all these things, differences between men and women and energies and all this stuff. And we kind of decided we're going to talk about mental fitness and clarity, which is kind of not really a departure from the nonprofit stuff, because I think it really matters, especially the leaders in the nonprofit world, understanding, their personal energies, how they're clear with their message, how their mental fitness is. And I don't think this topic gets enough airtime in the nonprofit world. And Sonia, why don't you tell us what you do with Looking2Leap?
Yeah, so I am what I'm calling now a creator. I work heavily on creating leadership content, leadership workshops, facilitating those workshops. And then I do some group and one-on-one coaching as well as part of the business, but heavily focused primarily on at-risk youth populations, working with nonprofit organizations that focus on youth, and then also working with nonprofit leaders, typically around leadership skills, heavily focused on self-awareness, things like mental fitness, communication, and how to match the impact that you're having with your intention. A lot of things that I personally have benefited from and I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, and we were doing our morning stretches right before we went live on this. We can't be cramping up on camera. That's just no good. But having that mental clarity and having a routine for that and making sure you're in the right space mentally. I mean, we've got so much going on. You've got people that are in the nonprofit world, but they also have a full-time job, and they usually have families, and a huge part of their life has changed due to COVID, and they're trying to run these organizations and it's hard to keep everything straight. It seems like so many people I'm talking to are getting overwhelmed and just bogged down with the sheer amount of stuff going on. And then if you turn on the news and see all the other stuff that's going on in the news, the whole tower just falls down if you do that. What advice do you have for people that are suffering from this overwhelm? Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of overwhelm. And it's funny because I'm seeing it just as much with youth as I am seeing it with the adults. It's just what's overwhelming them is different, but the core issues are both the same. Things like self-awareness is why I go to self-awareness first, is because oftentimes people don't even understand their value system and why they're doing what they're doing, and getting clear on what your values are. And a lot of people are getting tugged because they may have two values that are competing with each other. They may have a value of independent freedom and a value of family, and the two are tugging because they want their freedom to go achieve, go pursue the life they want. They want to be free. They want to have fun. They want to be creative. And then they have this value of family, and it's tugging because they want to be with their kids. And the more aware we could just be of those things, then we can actually look at how are we, I can see I have two values that are competing. And then how am I scheduling my time around these things? And how do I find balance in the space? But also I'm noticing that there's not a lot of language around emotion either. Like, people don't even know how they're feeling or what they're feeling and how to talk about it. One of the things I was actually working just with a group of kids last week was, it's called the feeling wheel. And it takes a core center of feelings that we're very comfortable saying, well, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry. And it expands upon that in a wheel. And it gives them this much wider language to use to say, like, well, maybe you're not just happy, maybe you're elated, or maybe you're just really satisfied. And with anger, it just gives you a much wider range of, like, you could be angry, or you could be livid, or you could be, I'm even trying to think of some of the words.
Irate, frustrated.
Irate. Yes, exactly. Right. And then tying that into, like, even if you notice your bodily sensations, like anger, what does anger feel like? Maybe you get hot, maybe you get really tense, and giving a language to what is happening within yourself to be able to even understand and then communicate that to others. And it's something I'm seeing both when I'm coaching youth, working with youth in workshops, and also I coach nonprofit leaders. I'm seeing the same thing. These are people who are servers, They love to help. They love to give of themselves, but they don't actually really know themselves very well. They're not very connected anymore to who are they and what makes them happy. And how do they know if they're going to get triggered when they walk into that meeting when Betty Sue starts, saying something about her manager again? Like the more you know who you are at the core and what your values are and why you're operating in the way that you are, that in itself can bring a lot of stress relief, a lot of clarity for people. And something I'm seeing prevalently is particularly with women. I happen to just find myself with primarily a lot of women when I'm working with clients, or I have a lot of Facebook groups, a lot of business groups that are all women. And there's just a consistent theme in there of, I'm just seeing a lot of women are trying to show up in business and in leadership like men do. They're trying to match the same thing their male counterparts are doing. They're trying to have the same habits and the same behaviors. And then so consistently, and I've done this myself, I have found this to be very true for myself as well. Like we end up very burnt out and very confused as to why these success measures aren't working for us. And that's a conversation I think that needs to start happening more in business and leadership actually as a whole, is just that men and women, not everything, this isn't true for everything because I know there's differences. Like some women carry a lot of masculine energy. Some men carry a lot of feminine energy, but there is definitely a trend happening right now. And I think that if that could be talked about, there's some benefit for a lot of women in business right now and a lot of women in leadership roles.
Yeah, we're going to get into this discussion between men and women and the differences. And I've got to caveat this here so people understand that we're speaking generally, that we don't know everything that we're talking about. And I want to say up front that if it wasn't for women having competing feelings between career and family winning a lot of those battles and pulling a lot of great women out of the business space, and if it wasn't for a lot of men who are like 51% qualified for the next level screaming, I want the next job, and most ladies are not saying that until they're 95, 97% ready for the next job. And so these men are gaining this advantage just because they're asking earlier. Other than those two things, I think really women crush men in every damn category out there. They're more caring, they're more attentive to detail. And just looking at the video, which our listeners can't see right now, Sonia's spiking her hair better than I do. She's got it crushed. She's got all this volume. It looks fantastic. So all that aside, I think women are far superior to men, except for just in a couple of categories. But business is really designed by men. And we were talking about this earlier. And most masculine type people have different qualities that they care about. And the two that really jump out of my mind are the drive for achievement and competition. If you look at video games, and not all video games are just played by guys, but that constant achievement, that constant little new puzzle, that new thing that they have to strive for and achieve, like that really hits a lot of men, and it makes us feel good. So that sales goal, that next quarter's earnings, that next thing, that's a big driver for men, but it's not necessarily the same thing for women. What do you see, Sonia?
Yeah, I agree. And it's not to say that women aren't competitive or driven. I just think that it's okay to look at ourselves and say, are we competitive and driven in the same way? I think you pointed out really well, like women have learned for years how to show up in a variety of environments. And when I think of even just a woman as a parent and like in a household and having a side job or a full-time job, whatever her life looks like. But even if you think about back in the day when women weren't primarily working, like just a woman as a mother and a spouse, that is a business. To me, like women have really powerful entrepreneurial business skills, because running a household and maneuvering children and making sure like all the things that involve parenthood is actually like a business. But I think that something shifts when, we as women, we know how to operate when we're in the environments we're used to being told that we're okay to be in, right? So we know how to operate when we're home. We know how to operate when we're a parent. We know how to operate in a relationship. But for some reason, when it comes to like a leadership position or a business, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and run my own business, we suddenly lose and let go of the things that made us so powerful as a woman in our all these other settings, and we try and do it like a man all of a sudden, and we say, okay, I'm going to go at business the same way that this guy does, and we start following the books or the success things or the things that we're told are going to take us to that next level. And in my opinion, based on things I have learned and what I have read and seeing other women do this, those things don't work for us so well, because there's not a lot of consideration in those spaces for listening to yourself, for taking rest, for considering that actually we have a hormonal flow and balance that varies, and it goes up and it goes down, and there's no space for fluctuality, in my opinion, right now in business. You're expected to show up the same way and have the same level of energy throughout day one through day 30 of the month. And with more and more women coming into business and showing up and wanting to be leaders and taking ownership, I'm seeing a huge chunk of women be completely exhausted, feel kind of lost in the game, and blaming themselves and saying that there's something wrong with them, that they're unmotivated or that they're incapable of matching up to this level that's being expected of them. And I would say, like, it's always good to look at those things. Of course, we always want to see, like, could I be doing more? Am I really showing up in my fullness? But I think there's a large piece that, like, women just aren't listening to their bodies, and they're not listening to their own internal drive, their own internal inspiration and motivation. And to look at, like, we're all, from men to women, we're all going to have a range of what showing up looks like for us. And that's where we should be focusing, is what's my range and what makes me the most effective, because it probably isn't going to look the same as Tony Robbins, and it's probably not going to look the same as Brene Brown and all these people that we're like, we're looking up to these people, but we came here to be us. We didn't come here to be them.
You know, I could work my tail off and try to emulate Sonia all day, every day. I could get the better spiked hair. I could get a little tan on. I can do all these things, but the best I could do is be second place to Sonia. The best I can do for me is be the number one Travis. And there's no other Travises out there. I am the only me. And yes, people, violated my copyright and stole my name, but I am me, and I was created to be the only one of me out there. And if I'm showing up as someone other than me, what am I even doing?
I am amazed, honestly, when I talk to a lot of, especially brand new entrepreneurs, I think, or even actually I do see a pattern. It's either brand new entrepreneurs, primarily females, or, and I'm going to say females again, just because that's who I keep ending up working with. And it's leaders and women who have been in the nonprofit world for years. That wheel has been going for a while. And there's like this, in the new entrepreneurs, they're really motivated and really energetic, but they're so lost. And it's because they're trying everyone else's way and they're not listening to themselves at all. And then in the other side of the, like, been in this business for a while, I love what I do, but I'm just so tired. There's that whole piece also. There's one consistent thing between the two of them, is that neither side is taking time. None of them have like a morning routine. They're not taking any space for themselves. They're not, waking up 10 minutes earlier and writing or meditating or praying or, whatever your particular way of connecting is. They're not taking breaks throughout the day to, like, go sit at a park or to just sit quietly. They don't have any kind of process around being mindful, being present. And they're typically not taking care of their bodies very well. They're typically not either having some sort of exercise, some sort of physical exertion, and they're probably not feeding their bodies very well either. And it's almost like this cycle that never ends, right? Like, I'm so exhausted, so I don't have the time to cook, or I don't have the time to go for a walk, and my family needs me, but I was at work all day, and now I'm working from home, so the two worlds like colliding, and there is no boundary setting happening between family and work and personal time, that they all feel guilty for daring to claim their own space.
The guilt is real. Guys, if you're listening to this, you don't know what I'm talking about. Ladies are like, well, of course the guilt is real. Why would you even say that? It's a known thing. Right now, at this very moment during the recording, it's the 19th of September. My wife and 3 of her friends are down in a cabin a couple of hours away, just doing, well, I don't know, whatever ladies do. If you believe the old 70s and 80s movies, they're having pillow fights. I'm sure that's not what's happening. I'm sure they're, what do they have on the schedule for today? Going antiquing. But I had to force my wife to get out of the house and go take some time for herself. She was here handling the household and working dang near full time while I was in Bahrain for a year. And now I'm back and COVID happened and, all of our lives have been thrown up in upheaval. And I told her, I was like, you have got to get out of here. You have got to go take some time for yourself. And then convincing other ladies to go with her and taking some time for them. It's like we're violating some kind of contract where women have to be there doing everything and feeling guilty while they're doing it. That is made up. It is just like women that can't wear the same outfit twice. It's made up. Wear the same outfit. No one gives a crap. You know who gives a crap? Catty women that don't really care about you. They give a crap. But everyone else doesn't care. No one gives a crap. But you mentioned something that I want to go back to, and that's taking time for you. Most of my clients are women, and most of the people I talk to and connect with are women. And I don't know if it's my deep, soothing radio voice or what it is, but they want to talk to me. And they're always on the go. They're always doing something, and they're always doing something for other people. And I'm like, when you get to the grocery store, before you run in there, take 5 minutes. Take 5. Sit there, put on whatever kind of music you want to listen to, put your hands in your lap, close your eyes if you have to, but take 5 minutes. They don't know how long it takes to grocery shop. No one's sitting there with a timer making sure you have it. You get to your next appointment and you're there 15, 20, 25 minutes early, sit your ass in the car. It is not going to help you to go run into whatever building you're going into to sit there to prepare for your day or your appointment or whatever the thing is. Sit in your car. Have lunch in your car. Get away. Be away from other people because you matter. Take some time for you. Do whatever it is. If you're into essential oils, have a little something in your car. Get a little bit behind your ears, smell it, love it, whatever it is. Take some time for you, even if it's 5 minutes. If you can do that 3-4 times a day, now you've had 15 or 20 minutes to focus on you, who you are, and your rebalance.
We're saying men and women a lot, and I know that there's a whole spectrum. There's a whole spectrum of people, of gender identities out there. But I can only speak on my experience and those I've worked with. I honestly don't have a lot of experience speaking with entrepreneurs or anyone who is more in that middle. Maybe they don't even identify with a particular gender, or they are a they, them. So I just want to throw that out, that I would actually love to hear from or know of anyone who doesn't identify with one gender or another, and what is your experience in business, and how are you noticing a similar pattern? Because I think what this really comes down to is whether you're masculine or feminine or a mix of both, are you taking the time to sit with yourself? Do you know what drives you? Do you know when you have great energy, when you have terrible energy? Do you know how to plan your day around that? Do you know what your values are? Do you know what your emotions are and how to communicate them? Like, at the end of the day, that's really what this comes down to. And it doesn't matter if it's men, women, masculine, feminine, or something in between. But are you taking the time to sit with yourself and know who you are, and then operating from there and not someone else's playbook?
I think that's important, to sit down and know who you are. I've been talking with a gal in a local nonprofit here in Oklahoma, and she's going through a transition period in her life. She's, separated from her husband. They're sharing custody, and, simple questions like, what do you do to have fun? She's having a hard time answering because she's been under this label for too long. And the labels could be Mrs. It could be mom. It could be, for men, it could be your job title or your career. It could be you as an athlete, that you are known for your prowess on the field, and all of a sudden you're injured and you don't have that sport anymore. Defining who you are without that label, just in you in your own space. And people ask me, well, you sound so confident in what's your label? I'm like, I'm Travis. I'm always Travis. I will always be Travis. Travis is who I am. And people kind of look at me funny. And I got a chance to speak at South Oklahoma City Rotary Club here week before last on September 11th. And I was talking to this gal that we just met at this meeting, and she didn't get a joke that I was saying right away. And my friend who invited me, she was chuckling. And I was like, I'm sorry, we just met, but here's the deal. I'm always going to be me. And the fact is you're just not comfortable with that yet. We always have to have this kind of like tiptoeing, gonna meet you. What does your family do? What's your job? And tiptoe into it. Here's the deal. If you meet me in person, if you've never met me, I'm going to be me, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And I hope to meet you, full on you from day one. It's not about the label. It's not that I'm, the head podcaster at Nonprofit Architect. It's not that I'm a lieutenant in the military. It's not that I'm a husband. It's not that I'm a dad. It's not any one of these other 100 titles you could probably ascribe to me. It's me, and I know who I am, and I know that I'm a person that has chronic back pain. And if people don't know me, and I feel my face and my back twinge and my face start twisting, I know that I got to say in the conversation, hey, my back's giving me some problems right now. So if my face looks angry or weird or twisted, it's not because I don't like what you're saying. It's because my back hurts. And because I brought it up and I said something in the conversation, people are like, oh, so I should just ignore all the little twinges. Like, yeah, my back is just killing me. Don't read into that. Listen to the words that I'm using. And they're like, oh, okay, because I was kind of getting a weird vibe from you. Yeah, the weird vibe is my back hurts. Don't take it personally.
Yeah. And being willing and able to have those conversations and even just what you just said right now, so many people wouldn't even have that conversation, right? They would not even be able to communicate or think it's okay to tell someone, hey, just so you know, I'm not like glaring at you. My back's hurting right now.
It's sitting at a restaurant and the sun's in your eyes. So you get this squinty scowl on your face. Ask to move. And if there's no place to move, just be like, hey, my face looks weird. I'm squinting because of the stupid sun over here. We love the sun, but right now it's hurting my conversation. Say something. It's no big deal. It is no big deal. You got a new shirt on and the tag is killing you and it's just really irritating. Tell the person you're having a conversation with so they don't think it's them. Please do them the favor of making sure they know it's not them. And we talked a lot before about little roadblocks that we put inside of our own heads, inside of our own bodies, inside of our own beings that we're using to prevent ourselves from doing something. What do you have to say about understanding blocks?
Yeah. So one of the first things that comes up for me around that is actually something I'm going to be teaching and working with youth on this upcoming week, but I'm teaching them about mental fitness. And something we talk about before we go into how to actually shift your habits is that oftentimes most of us, we have what's called a learned helplessness in some space of our life. We have this concept that we are out of control or have no power over certain aspects of our life. And I think that's one of the first blocks that people come across is that they've heard a story their whole life and they're 100% believing in it. That there's some area that they believe they're just completely out of control of. So it might be for a lot of clients that I talk to, it's, they have a spouse and they have a family and they have a job. And so they literally have I have no control over my time because my family needs me and my job needs me. And that's selfish of me to want 30 minutes in my day because I should be giving it it's this, I'm a victim to my own life. I'm a victim to being a parent. There is really a absolute lack of ownership in the space. And this might make some people angry, but I'm okay having those conversations where people can disagree with me. And so I do think that's one part of the block is that they're actually something I'm going to be teaching and talking to these kids about is that, our brains are created to shift. We have neuroplasticity. Our brains are meant to grow and to expand, and we're not who we are today does not mean that's who we're going to be in 20 years. And we also have the ability to think and study how we're thinking. And one of the most powerful things I think I've ever learned when it comes to mental fitness is don't believe everything you think. Like, actually come to your own thoughts with curiosity. And if it's a thought that feels really bad, be willing to sit with it and say, is this thought really true? Do I have 100% data to tell me that this thought is true? And then look at what the thought is causing you. Like, when I think this thought, how am I showing up? Am I showing up anxious, angry, frustrated? Like, what is this thought bringing to me? And then who would you be without that thought? If you didn't believe that thought was true, who would you be then? And for a lot of people, if they're willing to sit and actually look at that, most of our thoughts are not true. We're actually choosing to think them, or we're choosing to make them true at that moment. We have a choice that if we're thinking a thought that doesn't feel good and it's bringing us a lot of pain and a lot of frustration, we have a choice to let it go. And most times I would say that if there's a thought that you're really struggling with, it is typically you're getting a mirror of something, because we like to blame things. We like to either blame other people for our problems, or we like to blame circumstances. I would say like almost 100% of the time, if you're blaming something else, that something else is simply being a mirror reflection for what you need to deal with in yourself. So if there's someone that you think is incredibly judgmental, and that person really frustrates you because you're judgmental, there's a judgmentalness in yourself that you're not sitting with.
I kind of want to talk about that. You're talking about the internal side, and you're as far as I'm understanding this, you're really determining how you respond to your own internal thoughts. If we look at this in the physical world, we have the choice to respond. Like, if I get slapped, I choose how I respond. I could slap back. I could punch. If I was armed, I could pull out a gun and shoot them. I could scream. I could run away. I could start crying. There is so many different things that I could do to respond. But I think what you're getting at is you have the choice to react or the choice to respond. And if we talk about kids, I know you deal with a lot of kids, if someone calls you a name or says something about you, you have the opportunity to say, well, is that really true? And you either believe them that it's true, or you don't believe that it's true. Like, you don't really know me. Oh, you have a problem with me? Well, call me. Oh, you don't have my number. Oh, you must not know me well enough to be able to determine that about my life then. And it's easy to say when we're having this conversation here, across time zones. It's a little bit harder to say that when it's happening in the moment, because even though I've personally worked on some of this stuff for me, sometimes it goes well, and sometimes I'm like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about.
For sure. And I think the more that we practice curiosity with our own thoughts in the times when we're not having to face one of those circumstances, the more patterned and built in it becomes. And therefore, when we do encounter the situation, we will have more ability and more habit to automatically stop and say, well, is that true? Or do I even care? Right? I think one of the hardest things to learn is that when we get offended by something someone else tells us, it's typically when that's a belief that we are struggling with our own self. So if someone, I can use personal examples because that's what's fair. But like, I used to struggle a lot with someone making a comment about my appearance. And that was because even my own self wasn't comfortable with how I was presenting myself. And it's almost like a wound walking around, that all it takes is someone to just barely touch it, and there's a lot of pain. And I think that's how we should think about, like, if someone is calling you, I'm thinking of teens, right? If someone is calling you a name, your response to that has a lot to do with what you yourself believe in that moment. And the more solid you can get with yourself and embracing yourself and accepting yourself, the less impact others are going to be able to have on you, because if someone tells you that you're a nerd, if you've sat with being a nerd and embraced, like, yeah, I love to read, I love science, I love school, and you've actually learned to appreciate that about yourself, then being called a nerd is not going to hurt you. But if you look at that as being this horrible part and something wrong with you, then every time that happens, you're just going to fall apart. And that's what a lot of what I'm teaching with kids is like, it's all about your own self-acceptance. It's all about your own awareness and how much you can embrace yourself and let everyone else do what they're going to do. That's their business. That's their world. Get right with yourself and the world will change around you.
Oh, absolutely. And most of the time when things like that happen, it's a reflection of them. It does not have anything to do with you. You just happen to be the person standing in front of them. But I want to go back to something you said that I've been hearing a lot lately. And you said practice curiosity. And if you practice curiosity about whatever the thing is, I'm listening to "You Are a Badass" right now by Jen Sincero. Just one of my many books I've been going through. She talks about a scenario where someone texts you and you text them back and you thought you were in the middle of a conversation with them, but they put down their phone or it fell in the toilet, and all of a sudden you get insecure about it. And you're like, why are you texting me back? What is this thing? Did I say something wrong? So you text something else. So you text something else. And it turns out, their phone fell in the toilet and there's nothing you can do. And they didn't feel that way at all. But by practicing curiosity, you might have another explanations for something like, oh, I wonder if they just got busy. Oh, I wonder if their phone died, or I wonder if their phone fell in the toilet. And I'm trying to help my wife understands that she doesn't do very well. She doesn't practice curiosity when she's driving and other drivers are frustrating her. When I'm driving around and someone cuts me off, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they're in a big hurry. I wonder if they have a hurt family member. And if I can say that in my head, I can immediately let it go, and it has nothing to do with me. It's not like they were like, oh yeah, Travis, I see you back there. I know it's you specifically, and I'm going to try to run you off the road because I don't like you. Like, that doesn't happen. That's not a thing. No one's driving around like, oh yeah, hey guys, we got them. There's 6 cars and, they're working together to run me off the road. Like, oh yeah, Travis is over here. I know he's on his way to work. He's running a little bit behind today. Maybe, no, we're definitely going to make sure he has a rough time on the way to work today. Let's all work in coordination to make sure he gets angry. That doesn't happen. Their drive around has nothing to do with me, especially without me personally. But if I can practice curiosity and I wonder, what is going on in their head and what are they dealing with? What are they struggling with?
You've been listening to The Nonprofit Architect. To listen to all our past shows, visit http://nonprofitarchitect.org and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to some degree, it does come down to a choice of do I want to feel better or do I want to feel this frustration, anger, pain, sadness? And I will admit, just like you, like I've spent a lot of my life, even after learning some of this stuff, where like I was actually a little bit addicted to the dramatic emotions. I was a little bit addicted to the pain and a little bit addicted to the sadness. And I didn't know how to be without those things. And it took I'm still practicing it today. There needs to be a willingness to actually want to feel good too, because your thought of, oh, he's probably, rushing off to someone that really needs him right now. That's a thought that makes you feel good, but it also requires you to surrender being angry at him. We have to get honest with ourselves and ask ourselves if we're willing to surrender that sometimes. Are we willing to choose feeling good over and over and over again? And I think some of us would be surprised at how actually hard that can be, that we're a little bit addicted to our own emotional drama.
Yeah, I've been working on analyzing myself here for the last couple of weeks. Because someone mentioned being addicted to drama. They weren't talking to me. I just happened to hear it. And I remember, growing up in my childhood and what that looked like. And there was a lot of turmoil, so much turmoil. If you haven't read my bio, if you're listening to this and you haven't read my bio, go to my episode 0. And there's a little PDF of a chapter of a book that I've had published that talks about my life and my childhood. And for those that don't have the time, my mother has bipolar disorder and undiagnosed multiple personalities and a few other things. And that caused us to move 36 times before I graduated high school. That involved 6 states, 5 foster homes, surviving 2 murder attempts, and being in serious trouble with the law. And that is damaging. That is heartbreaking. It's one of the reasons that I do what I do is because there was always someone there to help me along the way. So now I'm taking my turn to help the helpers. But all of that stuff that happened was very dramatic and very just awful, most of it. I can't even tell you how many times I've been in court to try to figure out, which parent I should live with, or who's telling the truth, or do I have a court-appointed guardian ad litem, helping protect us as children, or, all of these other things that happen, and these horrific, like the 2 murder attempts that I survived, and people tried to actually kill me. Is that was all of my experiences growing up. And then now that my life is fairly stable, am I imagining some people that, may have a bad thing to say about me? Am I just trying to get back into that mode of when I was a kid and my life was just in turmoil? Is that just more of the same? Or am I holding on to that to try to get the feeling like of when I was a kid? And that's what I'm going for. So me personally, and I don't know if you did this, I've been intentionally practicing gratitude. I went through, I'm at work, I'm kind of limited, still being in the Navy, I'm kind of limited. I actually have Facebook access. And I went through people that were online in my messenger. And I went through and I put, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. And because A, it's true. B, people need to hear it. It's okay to share that someone else is having a positive impact on your life. And some people said thank you, and some people said why. When they said why, I put some things in there that I actually appreciated about them and the things they do and who they are as a person. And a lot of time it was like, you know what, thank you just for being you. And that means a lot. And I tell you what, just practicing gratitude has a huge upside. Those of you out there that don't believe me, give it a try. Let me know how it went. Find me on Facebook or leave comments on the podcast. Like, Travis, I actually practiced gratitude. I did this, this, and this. And you wouldn't believe what happened.
Gratitude is a powerful, powerful thing that we all have access to. I agree. It's a connector. It reminds us and it connects us. And I think right now, a lot of people would maybe push back and say, well, look at everything going on in the world. What's there to be grateful for? And I agree with you. I would say just try it. Like make a list every morning or every evening and you can pick the simplest things. I'm grateful to have water to drink. I'm grateful to have, I hope everyone has food to eat. And there's a lot of people who don't have those things right now. And, I would say I would challenge that every single one of us has a way to find gratitude in something. It might even be looking at a tree and seeing the beauty in it. It might be breathing. But gratitude can completely transform your life.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're listening to this on this podcast, on an app, on your phone, I mean, this wasn't possible 20 years ago. 40 years ago, 1980, this is a pipe dream. You had that monstrous brick-sized cell phone. If you wanted to take pictures, you couldn't use your phone. Like where we are in this point in history is crazy, because if you do watch the news, and what a blessing it is to have 24-hour news coverage, but the news is things that don't normally happen. Me having a great conversation with Sonia, I'm sorry to say, is not newsworthy, right? This isn't going to end up in the New York Times, or what a great conversation this is, because this is the normal thing that happens. People connect. People have great conversations. People do collaborations. They work together. They talk about gratitude. They talk about differences between men and women. They talk about all sorts of stuff. And it's not newsworthy, because the things that are newsworthy are things that are not normal. So just because the news can give it to you 24/7 and they can keep repeating whatever story they want to repeat, they have the choice to do whatever they want, doesn't mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm saying it's an oddity, it's an outlier, it's something out of the normal. If you are a news junkie, you're probably not very happy with your life in general right now, because they only sell fear and terrible things. But
don't watch the news.
I read the news, and reading the same story or the transcript of a news story, you read it in your internal monologue is the same volume and the same tonality all the time. You can't scream at yourself in your head. You can pretend, but it's going to sound exactly the same. But if I'm watching the news and I hear them screaming, hear them getting excited, then I get excited. But if I read it, I don't.
You also have choice. You also have choice in what you're reading versus watching. Yeah, that's awesome.
Tell us about a belief system. We talked about that a little while ago, about a personal belief system and what that means. How does that affect people, their own belief system?
I think beliefs and identity are very closely tied together. And, I think when we think of belief system, oftentimes we go to like the big ones of like maybe spiritual or religious beliefs. There's a lot of cultural belief systems, I think, that definitely can cause us some angst in our lives if we're trying to grow. A belief system is anything that you're telling yourself is 100% true. And that to me is when it becomes a roadblock. It's a really interesting dichotomy, because I think that it's important to know who you are, but oftentimes we're telling ourselves who I am are these labels I identify with and these beliefs that I have. But we're also people and souls who are meant to grow and expand and shift and change and open. And those identity labels and those beliefs are going to get in the direct way of growth. And I think you see a lot of people that struggle with this. There's a lot of people right now who are really struggling with who they are because they want something different, but that something different might actually pull directly against their beliefs. There's a lot of cultures, right, who have certain beliefs about what women should or shouldn't be doing, what men should or shouldn't be doing. They won't even acknowledge anything outside of those two genders. There's a lot of family structures on who you should be in the family and the role that you're meant to play. And if you want something outside of that, you're going to have to battle that belief. Does it mean that you're a bad person? Does it mean that you don't love your family? Is that really who you want to be? And I think our belief structures and our identity structures are the things that are being most challenged right now. People who have lost their jobs that believed that their identity was directly linked into them being a leader or them being the manager, whoever they were in their jobs, they're flailing right now, trying to figure out, if I'm not that, then who am I? And I know it's painful and it's not an easy road, but I would say that it's the road we're all needing to be on right now. Like we're all meant to be figuring out who we are without these boxes.
It's amazing when you have a job change and losing identity. I mean, I'm active duty Navy, and I end up talking to tons and tons and tons of veterans, and you go from this regimented lifestyle where you have A, B, and C, and you have orders, and you have a clear path, and you understand your mission, you're able to do this stuff, and then you get out for whatever reason, and you have these traumatic experiences, or you have this structure and you have this camaraderie, and then you go in the civilian world and you're like, yeah, kind of just do whatever you want. And you have to reintegrate with people that don't have this structure, these values, this camaraderie, and they don't have the same. They might have drive, but it's not the same drive. They might have dedication, but it's not the same dedication. They might have different qualities, and you're reintegrating with a group of people that no longer have the exact same values as you do. And you go from this strict, rigid rank structure, and you understand who's in charge, and you get into an organization where like it's flat, like no one has a title, and you have these open workspaces, and no one's really in charge, and no one's really working for anyone else. And you're like, how does this even work? And you get to this place of frustration because the structure that you had is now taken away. You're no longer a sergeant or a captain or whatever you had, and now you're just Bob. What does Bob do? Or now you're just Travis. Like, if I don't have this podcast anymore, I'm not the head podcaster. I'm still going to be Travis. I'm just going to be texting people instead of, having a podcast out there. Like, but those changes, those impact you, whether it's, going from being single to being engaged to being married, or married to being divorced, or having children or not having children when you want children, or losing a child, which is just going to be the worst thing ever. Who are you going to be? What does your belief system say? What do you identify as? Or do you identify with that title? with that role, with that community expectation, with that standard. I come from northern Minnesota, pretty homogenous area, a whole bunch of white people up there. They're from Scandinavia, Germany, Poland. They are the whitest people on the planet. And growing up in that environment, you hear different things about different cultures, and you're like, and then you meet them and you're like, well, that wasn't true, or that doesn't make sense, or that's not in alignment. And you start growing as your beliefs get challenged, and your opinion changes over time, and how you meet people and how you interact. And I remember moving around all the time, and you go from someone saying, this is how it's going to be, and this is the way we're going to do it. And you go somewhere else and you hear the same thing, but they're doing it differently. And you're like, well, if you said it's the only way it can be done, and they said it's the only way it can be done, if we're doing it differently, what the hell does that mean? There's no rules. You can do whatever the heck you want to do. You might have some consequences with our legal system, but figure it out. Figure out who you are. Figure out who you want to be, and figure out how the heck to contact Sonia if you want her services as Looking to Leap. Sonia, where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks, Travis. So my website is www.looking2leap.com, and that's the number 2. I'm also on Facebook under Looking to Leap, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Looking to Leap. You can find me on Instagram, but I will admit I'm not very active on Instagram. So I don't post there very often. So the best routes are definitely my webpage or Facebook or LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I'm so glad we had this conversation, and we were able to have an adult conversation about some of the differences between men and women identity, and what drives us, and even how to take a break. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate the opportunity.